Welcome to the Slingshot Group podcast. I'm your host, Tim Foote, CEO of Slingshot Group, where we build remarkable teams through staffing and coaching. And for our conversation today, I'm joined by Laura Story. Some of you know Laura as a Grammy and Dove award-winning artist and songwriter behind songs like Indescribable and Blessings. And others know her as a worship leader, an executive church leader. Others know her as an author. I know Laura as a friend. We've journeyed together for many years now, and I'm so glad to have her on the podcast today. Well, Laura, great to have you on the Slingshot Group podcast, finally. Now, Laura, we've been friends for a long time now.
You make us sound old.
Well, I'm starting to feel a little old. I know it's well over a decade. And
Yes.
I think it was at some worship conference somewhere, over a decade ago, that I met you, and you were talking about how you are a worship pastor in the local church because everybody knew you for your music and how important that was for you. But I remember just how real you were, and you have always been, then journeying with the staff at Perimeter and seeing you serve so faithfully. But I'd love to start like 30,000 feet up, if that's all right with you.
Do it.
And woven through your books, songs, ministry is a powerful story that God has been writing in and through your life and continuing to write through your life. Share a little bit about your journey and your story.
Well, even the fact that you said serving at a local, leading worship at a local church, those were words that you never had, 30, 40 years ago. We didn't even have to say that, because that's what it means to be a worship leader. It's in this new age of, kind of the celebrity, like radio, all that kind of stuff, which is still kind of weirds me out. But and I'm assuming that's what you're saying as far as my story. So I grew up Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I never in a million years thought that I'd be doing what I'm doing, partly because I didn't even know this was a thing. And I'm not even sure that it was a thing when I was growing up. I grew up in a fantastic, big Baptist church. I played the string bass in their orchestra, but their music director was a dude in a suit that would conduct us. And so if you were to say, if you would have told me then that I would be, part of a staff team overseeing worship, I would have said, no, because I'm not a guy. I don't own a suit. I don't know how to conduct an orchestra and choir. So it does look very different. But even as a young kid, I loved church music. I loved the old hymns. I loved being part of a, like in the context where I grew up, a choir and orchestra that was leading God's people in worship. So I think that's kind of how I got the bug, the worship director, church staff bug.
So you bug. Where did it lead to from there?
That's a good question.
How'd you get from that orchestra to what was next?
Well, this is kind of funny too, because I was a string bass major at University of South Carolina, and then long story short, I went on this. So I broke my arm. That was the first thing that happened, and then I went on this mission trip because I was planning on doing all sorts of string bass things, orchestral things that summer. Wasn't able to. Went on a mission trip because I thought, I got this broken arm, but apparently God can use anybody. That's what they were telling us as they were trying to get signups. Spent a little over a month in outer Mongolia, and really, I grew up in the church. I was already a Christian, I think, but the way that God grabbed a hold of my life in that summer was just, it was tremendous. So when I came back, I didn't even want to play music anymore. I was kind of done with it. I just wanted to tell people about Jesus. And that's when someone on the trip was a graduate of Columbia International University, this tiny little Bible college that was only 20 minutes from the University of South Carolina. So I actually did keep playing in the orchestra at USC for a little bit and taking, but I was fully enrolled in at the Bible college. And kind of during that time, it was right around the time, you'll remember this, Tim, the band Caedmon's Call You remember
Oh, yeah.
Caedmon's Call? Yeah.
Oh, I remember. I
Yeah.
remember.
They were huge. They were all all the rage. But there were some guys that played guitar that said, "Hey, you should come bring your bass and play at this coffee shop." And as someone who had grown up, doing symphonic music, in what my high school sweetheart had affectionately termed the Dorchestra. As someone that grew up there, it was like, to get to be asked to play at a coffee shop. It was by far the coolest thing anyone had ever asked me to do musically. So I went and did that, and we formed a band, and we were playing music as a group called Siler's Bald. We played youth groups, we played colleges, we did all of it for about 5 years. And that's kind of that's how I began to see, worship ministry as being more than just choir and orchestra. And it was kind of a neat time in Christian music as well, because this acoustic, and I had grown up listening to James Taylor and, all the great acoustic legends. And
Yeah.
so it was neat to see, oh, wow, the Lord really can use any genre of music.
Yeah. It's interesting, Laura, you said, at that time before then, you didn't even really want to play music. You just wanted to tell people about
Yeah.
Jesus. And, what I've learned from our friendship over so many years is there are so many levels to Laura. And you're an incredible leader who I think, and this might be oversimplifying it and putting words in your mouth, but I think music has just been a tool for you to express great truth and theology.
Yeah.
And your leadership shines through all of that. And God has blessed your work, your leadership and ministry, and given you a national platform without asking for it and without striving for it. And yet you still made a deliberate choice to faithfully serve within local church ministry, making that such a significant part of your life. I'm curious about this. And so hopefully our leaders listening today are curious about this, because it's not uncommon to talk with church leaders who are looking for an out of church ministry, where you're choosing to be in church ministry. Why commit to it? And is today a good day to ask you?
Man, that's a great question. Well, and thanks for saying those kinds of things. Anything that I've learned about kind of what ministry is really about, I've learned a lot of that the hard way. So when I was growing up, I was serving in my local church, using my gifts, but let's be honest, I had discovered some musical gifts, and I was using those as arrows pointing to me. And I could be up there on a stage, and I say back then, I mean, let's be honest, we all have those days where I'm up there on a stage, on a platform, leading worship, and really I'm thinking about me. And so I feel like even me setting aside the music for a little bit, it's what I needed to do in order to really kind of reprogram how I was using my gifts. That these gifts that God's given me need to be used as arrows pointing to Him, how great our God is, not how great I am. Which any worship leader is still gonna, we fluctuate in that. Depends on the week. As far as choosing church ministry, so this is kind of a funny story. So I had left the band, but I'd written this song called Indescribable. And I'd written it. I was planning on the band recording it. By the way, I barely sang in the band. I was the bass player, and I was like completely terrified of being up front. I'd grown up playing string bass, which is the perfect instrument. Like when I started in middle school, I was like, this is a great instrument for an insecure middle schooler that wants to be in the very back of the orchestra, count like 40 measures of rest, and then play like 10 notes.
Going out of the plane.
Yes. I guess God did have other plans. But I had written that song, and then a few people had heard it. And then there was this record label that started talking to me my senior year of college. And so I left college. I was moving to Nashville. I was doing a tour with Andrew Peterson, and had already had all that lined up. Left, told all my friends at graduation, I am moving to Nashville to sign a record deal. I got there, and there was some reshuffling at the label. And basically it was, as people know with the industry, just things can change instantly. But basically these two labels combined. And so each of them had a short list of artists they were about to sign. And I met with the new guy. I met with the new guy at the label. And he said, "Hey, so tell me about like your hopes and dreams for music." I said, "Well, I really like playing my guitar, and I currently play at my youth group at my old church, and I really hope I can keep doing that." And I think as someone, this record, like he's thinking, wow. I mean, he probably drew a line through my name as I was sitting there. I just didn't notice. So I showed up to the studio that day. I'd gone by and met him that morning, showed up at the studio, and got him Ed Cash, who is just still a dear friend. Ed, I get there and Ed says, "Hey, I don't know how to tell you this. They just called from the label and they told me to cease production. We're done. I'm really sorry." I packed up my stuff and I drove home and I moved back in with my parents.
Oh.
And all my friends, like, they would, "How's Nashville? How's the record deal?" And it's like, it was mortifying. It was just absolutely embarrassing. And I thought, Lord, what on earth are you up to? And around that time, so anyway, I moved back home. Sorry, I'm giving you way more detail than you wanted.
No, this is great. This is great.
I moved back in with my parents, and my dad's like, "Well, I'm sorry about that, but the filer, the medical records filer in my office just quit. So tomorrow morning, 8:00, I'll see you there.
Show up."
He's like, you're not gonna stay here and not pay rent. Like if you're home, you're working." And so literally the only qualification is I had to know the alphabet. So I went from I'm just like this tiny little filing. I'm filing from 8 to 5 every day. And I'm thinking, God, really, really, God? But all that to say, I ended up during those weeks, I got reconnected with my high school sweetheart, Martin, who I am now married to. And he was doing college ministry at the time, with a group called Campus Outreach. And I started kind of hanging around, and he would, on Monday nights, he would he had this tiny little house right off of campus. He would push all the furniture back and he'd fill his house with like 50 or 60 college kids. No chairs, like they're all sitting on the floor. And he's teaching them the Bible. And he said, "Hey, do you want to play some songs?" And I'm seeing what's happening with him just pouring his life into people and showing them the truths of Scripture. And it really changed me. And it really reminded me, like, this is what it's about. And if I can use music to be part of that. And it ended up, Tim, probably 9 months later, I had another record label call and ask if I would be interested in talking with them. But the 9 months later version of me, I knew what I wanted to be about. More, I think before I'd gotten the call from the record label, and it's like, "Oh yeah, tell me who you want me to be. You want me to, and I'll be that person." Well, I think I had enough humbling, but also enough time to reflect, in the Scriptures that ministry really is. It's serving people, whether we're doing that as an accountant, whether we're doing that as a guitar player. So yeah, way too long of a story for your podcast. You can edit this thing, right? You can chop up.
Talk about the powerful refining work of God. And for me, I've seen the results of the story you just told, which I haven't heard before. I've seen the results of that in your local church work and my involvement with Perimeter Church, and how you've worked. Perimeter has an amazing history of worship music at that church. I mean, when you look back, and you've attracted so many great songwriters, and I've watched you lead them and pastor them to realize that local church is a beautiful thing. And
thanks, Tim.
In the world we live in right now, in staffing and coaching churches and nonprofits, we've got lots of people dumping out of the church.
Yeah.
We need to tell a more beautiful story of the ministry of the local church, which you just did. But I'd love you to restate that. how can we as church leaders tell a more beautiful story of
Mm.
what it is to serve on the front lines?
Okay, so before I do that, I have to tell you another little part of my story, and
Yeah.
that's so we came to, I guess, picking up there. Martin and I ended up getting married, and he wanted to go to grad school, and that's when we were planning on going to Savannah College of Art and Design. And a friend of mine who worked here at Perimeter called and said, "Hey, do you know that they have a branch? They're just opening a brand new branch of SCAD right here in Atlanta, and our church is looking for a female worship leader." And I said, "Okay, you mean your Presbyterian church is looking for?" Now you've got it. Like, there must be some mistake. Anyway, so we really weren't looking, and so I came on to, but if just the Lord made it so clear. So we came on staff. It was 2005. I say we, my husband and I, both work here. In 2005, we came on staff, and it was about 8 months after that Martin was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And I sometimes get emotional when I talk about this, but he went in for brain surgery and ended up just had a lot of complications. We were supposed to be there a couple weeks. He was there 3 months, and now he lives with traumatic brain injury, and so he can't drive, has struggles with his memory, just all sorts of things. And so we are probably, I guess, 18 years out from his initial surgery, and still ups and downs. Tim, you asked earlier how I was doing. Martin was just in the hospital just a couple weeks ago. And so but the reason I tell you all this isn't just because I can't afford therapy. And this is really very cathartic telling all of this to you and your listeners. The reason I tell you all of this is one of the things that's been really essential to me understanding ministry and lifelong ministry is that it's not this formula where we get it all together and now we can serve God. It's like that the thorn, and that Paul talks about, the thorn in his flesh. A lot of times we look at that and go, "Oh, that's really cool that despite the thorn, Paul had this tremendous ministry." I think, I'm not a theologian here, but I think it was because of the thorn. I think about the insights that he knew about God's peace and God's grace and the freedom that he found in Christ. I think it was probably more because of the thorn. And I can say that because our greatest, I'll call it a limitation, that's been Martin's disability. It's also been the thing that has kept us reliant on the Lord, reliant on the local church. And it's also shown me that ministry is not about me reaching some point of strength that I can bless the local church with all of my infinite wisdom and problem solving ability. It's when I am the most needy, God shows up and he leads people through me.
Mm. I think that's scriptural, Laura, that what happens to God's strength in our weakness.
Mm.
And, I've been blessed to witness your family journey and amazing marriage over so many years. And I know ups and downs, and
Yeah.
I still.
He's the up, I'm the down.
and 4
He's
kids.
by far the better half.
I mean, let's just mention the 4 kids. I mean,
I know.
unbelievable. And I also know to lead pastors listening to this podcast today, what a strength you are to Jeff Norris, the lead pastor of Perimeter Church. I mean, he shares with me all the time the wisdom that you bring to his leadership. And not only a worship pastor, worship leader, you as songwriter, you're also an author, woven through your books that have blessed so many, like So Long Normal, When God Doesn't Fix It, are themes that you've alluded to of what you've learned through navigating situations where things just didn't go the way that you'd hoped. And it's part of your story. It's part of everyone's story at some level, in varying degrees, whether that be situations with family, church, ministry, or even the issues we face in culture today, which
Yes.
feels like it's at a boiling point, it's
Yes.
safe to assume that everyone listening is in the middle of or approaching situations that are not going the way we hope. So, what's your
Yes.
advice for
Oh,
how we
that's great.
approach moments or seasons of disappointment like this?
Well, okay, let me give you two answers. First answer is we probably, we got probably 5 years into Martin's uh, brain injury, and we got him to the point where he was doing well physically, but we were tanking spiritually. And I'm on staff at a church. We don't know how to tell anybody. I don't know how to tell anybody in a way. Everyone's like, oh, we're so glad Martin's alive. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to say, yeah, but we're dying. And how do I receive care from the church when my job is to care for the church? And so I just felt like we couldn't tell anyone. And we really kind of bottomed out and had a couple of the pastors come around and say, hey, we are not looking for you to be perfect. We're not looking for you to, like, you need a season to not be okay. And it was probably, I think it was about 6 months of me taking time away from being upfront, and it's not like I've returned now and I have it all together, but it was sweet that the church said, hey, you take some time. And that was, I mean, Perimeter's an amazing place. And that was one of the things that I always so appreciated. But I'd say but here's the thing. In the midst of all of that, there was it was, Scotty Smith. Scotty Smith, he's a pastor, amazing author. Anyway, he sat down with us and says, hey, what is the main problem in your marriage? And we both, like, immediately, Martin's disability. And we hadn't been able to agree on anything for months. We could agree immediately on that. And Scotty said, nope. Said, it's not the disability, it's your sin. And we had to get to the point of realizing that there were things that were hard in life. And there will be, until Jesus returns, there is brokenness that remains. But we had to, and still do, we have a choice. Am I going to allow the brokenness that I feel? Am I going to allow it to make me bitter, make me discouraged, make me question God's purpose for me, question his presence in my life? Or am I going to allow these limitations, these hard things in life, to reveal ways that my hope, I would say, my hope is in God. I would say that from up front. I'd say it to you. But I think for a long time, my hope was in God changing my circumstances. And it's very different than saying my hope is in God. So I feel like for people in ministry, we're so quick to see the problem, like everyone in ministry. Oh, I just wish I'd made more money. My wife's hounding me about, go ask for a raise. There's all these things in ministry, or ministry would be easier if if that person in my congregation got a job transfer. Maybe that's the answer. That might be the answer in some scenarios, yes. But often we forget that following Jesus, you know what road Jesus was on? He was on a road to the cross. Okay. So when I'm following Jesus, I'm actually on the road to the crucified self. And so I have to see these things, these limitations, these really hard things that come into my life as an opportunity to bring me to a place of recognizing my need, and also showing me ways that I'm not dying to self the way that I need to, the ways that I'm not. I mean, I guess I can talk about this. I was just in a meeting a few minutes ago here at the church about someone who is just struggling, like something's not going their way. Not that anyone in ministry can relate to this. Their boss is not doing it this right. And they care so passionately about it. And the question I was asking is, like, how do we care so passionately about what we do, yet still have our hands open enough to what God wants to show me about himself, what God wants to show me about myself. And that's a challenge. I don't know if you said, how do I encourage people? I'm not sure how encouraging that was.
Well, as you're talking, I think it's admitting our brokenness. Jesus was pretty clear about
Yes.
how this was going to go, Laura, and he said it was good. He said it was going to be rough.
Yeah.
As you're talking, some of my favorite song lyrics came to mind. Leonard Cohen, you can't get better than Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
Anthem, ring the bell, still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
Yep.
And it's when we're honest about the brokenness that God does his best. One of the scary prayers I try to pray almost daily is, God, help me to be desperately dependent on you, not me.
Yeah.
Because it's when it's not that I get into trouble.
Yes.
And so you just had a real example of a meeting action that you were in. And so let's take a shift to life in church ministry. At Perimeter, you lead a team of artists and creatives, not exactly the easiest team to lead. And
But they're the best. They're the most fun, though.
They're the most fun. Reality is, building and leading teams is never easy, no matter what kind of team you're working with. How has your background as a creative shaped how you build and lead teams?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. And honestly, leading a team, I'm not entirely sure that so our church, it's probably 4,000 or 5,000 people. And our new pastor, Jeff, came on. He took over as our head pastor probably about 4 years ago and created a leadership team. And that when they asked me to be on it, I think my first response was, that doesn't sound like the best idea. There's a lot of things I'm good at, but I'm not entirely sure that I'll be good at this. And the truth is, I did have to learn. I was surrounded by a bunch of people that were fantastic at managing people. I have grown in that, but I'm realizing it doesn't look as organized as other people. There's a lot of listening that I'm bringing to the table. But the truth is, I really am loving. I'm loving my job, because my main role is listening to people, helping them answer the question, like, what is my role in this amazing thing called the Great Commission? What is my role? How can I live that out here at Perimeter, or maybe not? How can I live that out somewhere else? And creatives, even though there are times that they can be harder to wrangle in, what I find is that they are great at thinking big about how they might fit into God's greater story, and that's really what I get passionate about as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, Laura, listening to your journey, and you're at the back of the room, and you didn't want to be at the front of the stage. Instead, pulled you there, and then you didn't expect to be on an executive leadership team of a mega church, and God put you there. I know from personal experience, each new level of leadership, God has always given me a sense of, hey, lead how I created.
Yeah.
Because I called you to this next role, and it's a sum of your experiences. How do you find leading in both directions, leading up to an executive leadership team, but then pastoring the team below you?
Oh, yeah, that's a great it's a great question. I think one of the things we talk with the ELT, and Tim, this may be a Tim-ism that I don't even know that I'm supposed to be attributing to you. When we talk about wearing two hats, is that something that you've talked about?
Maybe. I won't take credit for that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take credit then. I came up with this great idea about. I'm just kidding. No, but this idea of wearing two hats. So I am the executive director of worship, and so I am advocating on the behalf of that precious group of staff and volunteers. Our volunteer community, 300 people. It's this amazing group. And that's one hat that I wear. My other hat is my leadership hat. And it's me looking at all of the ministries as being all the ministries are important to God. All the ministries are birthed out of some sort of, instruction from Scripture. And having to take off my worship hat and put on my leadership hat and listen well and serve well with the teams. And honestly, just praying that the Lord will give me the discernment. When do I need to advocate for my worship leaders? When do I need to step back and maybe deliver the hard news to the worship leaders of, actually, we're not going to do it this way, but we're all going to be team players here, because there's a really good reason why we're not going to do it this way. So I don't know. I don't do it perfectly. But I'll tell you one more thing. I had a little bit of, and hopefully people will relate to this. I had a little bit of struggle when I started off on the leadership team, because I had such a sweet camaraderie with my worship staff that all of a sudden I was leaving and I was the boss. And it's like, you could feel it when I walked into the room, all laughter stopped and you're like, oh, the boss is here, and that was hard for me at first, but I began to, I had to really trust, that my value, so often we're just looking for value. We as church staff, as ministers, as pastors, when our value is in question, we're tempted to give the fun message instead of the theologically sound message. When our value is in question, we are tempted to, I know that HR policy is this, but I'm going to let my team do this because it would really make them happy. I had to really come back to the fact that my value is in Jesus. He is thrilled with me, so that I'm not going into my job looking for affirmation. That's a dangerous place when you're going into your job looking for affirmation, rather than I am fully affirmed by the Lord. Or if I need affirmation, I need to go to my girls. I need to go to my friends that can remind me of who I am and who I am in Christ, so that when I come to my team, I can share that overflow, lovingly say to them, I love you and I value you, but we're going to need to do this differently. And even if you don't understand that, it's okay. And I'm really going to pray for you. We'll both pray together about how this transition is going to look.
That's really profound on attaching it to value, because our value is usually attached to being a part of what God is doing when we're in our most healthy spiritual state. It's praying that prayer, hey, God, I just want to be a part of what you're doing today. I don't want to be, I don't want to be anything else. But for me, in the work that we do, that most effective leaders know how to effectively lead in both directions. And for you, having journeyed with you and Perimeter for so long, I've seen you from Laura, who was kind of like an Alex in residence.
Yeah.
But you were providing, you always provided so much more, to now being the executive director of ... I see you still being Laura. And I think that comes down to authenticity in leadership. I'd love you to talk a little bit about that. The coaching we do with leaders is leaders who are striving for more leadership, more influence, trying to be or become something they think they need to be instead of more authentically the unique person God has called them to be. And I hear that through your journey of you surrendering to that and you being still fully you. Talk about maintaining authenticity in leadership. How can we learn from that and your journey?
So I can tell you what I specifically do. When I am, planning my year, planning my job description or whatever, I think about it like in thirds, and I always save a third of what I do. I'm going to call it for my churchman responsibilities. Not like a man or woman thing, like church person responsibilities, because there are some things that we can get so busy with ministry, with planning center, with meetings, with planning, whatever. I mean, we plan it, we meet a lot of meetings, a lot of emails going on at Perimeter. But I like to set aside, what are the things that I need to remember to do as a minister, as a believer, Just because I'm on staff with worship doesn't mean that I shouldn't attend this community outreach service project, things like that. And so I feel like that's part of the authenticity, because, the evil one would love to trick you into believing, especially as worship leaders, that because of your unique gift and calling, your gift is best utilized on stage, or you are a stage person. And I feel like that's how he does that. The evil one wants to do that to enlarge our egos. He wants to do that to distance us from the actual people that we lead. So I think that we always have to, especially at a big church, you always have to kind of fight that and make sure that that's not something you're allowing to creep in. I was doing a seminar with some college students. Golly, I think it was last week, and they wanted to know the nuts and bolts of being a worship leader. And one of the things that I said was, hey, you need to be hey, don't be a jerk. Hey, don't be an arrogant jerk, because if you are a jerk around your fellow students all week, they don't want you to get up. It doesn't matter how good your voice is. It doesn't matter how smooth your transitions are between songs, or how, well delivered your prayers are. If you're a jerk, nobody wants to be led in worship by you. And so I feel like a lot of times, especially for worship leaders, we actually gain equity with the people we lead when we're actually among them. So I feel like there's a big authenticity piece there. That being said, authenticity and vulnerability are two different things. You don't need to be joining a small group with a bunch of people and sharing all your stuff with everybody. That's not necessarily the best thing for you or them. But figuring out, what does it mean to be authentic?
So, Laura, as we close, what's God teaching or showing you in this season of your ministry that could encourage church leaders listening today?
Oh, man. Well, I had a book. You asked what God's teaching me right now. And I don't do book endorsements, or maybe I do a couple of them, but I wanted to show you this book, because I just read it and I want to recommend it. No, I don't even know this guy. It's called Humility by Gavin Ortland. Our team just read it. Oh, it's so good. If you're familiar with Andrew Murray's, which is like the classic humility book, this is all of that, plus like the back half of it is specifically for church leaders. And I want to say it's so good. It's so painful, Tim. This book is so painful for me. But it talks about, there's so many leadership principles that are all based on humility. The thing that God's teaching me right now is that I may get things done, but it matters greatly how I get those things done. When we're, if someone was to tell stories about me, I wonder if they would say, man, Laura, she had some amazing ideas, and Easter was fantastic because she had this amazing, or would she say, oh, Laura was the one that listened to me. She showed up when my child was in the hospital. And I'm not, if there's something I need to grow in, I need to listen more. I need to be more present. I need to be slower to show up with the solutions. So I've been in ministry for 20 years now. And so it's very easy when someone walks through my door with a problem. I've heard it 18 times before. So within their first 30 seconds of sharing, I already have my answer. Rather than listening, or even, Tim, I'm sure that this isn't just a church thing. This is just anyone working in ministry thing. You have your list of things you're supposed to get done that day. If someone shows up to your office with a problem, that's an interruption. Rather than saying, if you are employed by a church, then those interruptions are just as much part of the agenda that God wrote, before the foundations of the earth, in treating that person, treating that issue, not just as worthy of my time and attention, but also it's a window into when someone comes in with any problem, like the problem this morning. too much haze in the sanctuary. Okay.
Oh, that's not. Well, that's an uncommon problem. Not these days.
I didn't mention it because
Allergies. Allergies.
exactly.
Anyone?
Yes,
Nobody's allergic
how
to hay.
loud the sound is, how bright the lights are. There's all of this. But when someone comes up with a problem, even as technical as it is God. God can use that for both my sanctification and theirs.
Yes.
And just seeing really the spiritual propensity of that interruption, and that's what I want to learn to do better.
That's great, Laura. So takeaway from that is be open to his agenda today and
Oh
every
yes,
day. Yeah.
absolutely.
Laura, thanks for
Hey, can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Be
Say
open
it.
to his agenda today and every day. And then when you go home, figure out a way, as much as God used you in a tremendous way at your ministry job that day, he has family things that he has for you. And because everyone's done you walk in the door, but you're still processing, and you're mentally absent for your kids. It's like, just trust God with all those things you didn't get to. Just Erin Smalley, who's a friend of mine. She's a counselor, and she says when she gets home at 4:30 and she goes upstairs, she probably doesn't want me to tell you all of this, but she goes upstairs, puts on her pajamas, and gets in her bed for 20 minutes, and she just surrenders every bit of work. She just says, Lord, I surrender this to you. Help me set this aside. I'll pick it back up first thing tomorrow, but I want to be present at home, because the work that you're doing in me here at my house is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the things you're using me to do in the kingdom.
That's author David Timms asks, whose kingdom are we building? And he says, try taking your foot off the gas pedal and see what happens. Then you'll find out whose kingdom you're kingdoming.
Oh, Tim, always so good.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. I have teenage boys, Laura, and when they start talking, it reminds me to put my device down and listen. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even have time to talk about devices. We don't even.
Yeah. Oh, Laura, we have to have another conversation sometime. But your insight has been fire today. Thank you so much. Where can listeners find out more about you or connect with you or support you?
That's a great question. So if you want music stuff, Laura Story music and travel schedule and all that. But here's what I want to say just specifically to your people.
Yes.
Perimeter Church, one of our values, probably our highest value, is we want to be an equipping church. That doesn't mean we have all the right answers, but it just means that we want to help people in this process. So my email, probably on this podcast, you'll have me as Laura Story, but I'm Laura Story Elvington. That's my married name. And so my email is laurae@perimeter.org. Please reach out if there's ever any other questions or just resources. I may not have them, but I might be able to point you to the right person. But just know that you're not alone in trying to think through this whole ministry thing.
Laura, thanks for your availability, your honesty, your investment, your leadership, and all you're doing. So appreciate you, and thanks for being with us today.
See you, Tim.
See ya. Well, so many insights from that conversation with Laura. You know, what I take away from that is Laura's natural authenticity and how God has continued to use that to expand her influence in leadership. We need to continue to be open-handed to what He's doing in our lives and our journeys, and to always surrender to His agenda. Let's remember to do that today and every day. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leave a review on Apple Podcast, or share this conversation with another leader. Thanks again. Until next time, stay curious and reach for the remarkable.